Today is June 15th, 2009. My name is Lester Charlack, and on behalf of the Jewish Historical Society of Lower Fairfield County, I have the pleasure of interviewing Dan Stevens. Good afternoon, Dan.
Hi, Les.
Well, Dan, I want to find out a little bit about you for posterity. And Dan, when were you born?
May 21st, 1920,
And where?
in the Bronx.
Okay.
And I know we lived in an apartment house there.
Don't move.
We lived in an apartment house there, and I know we lived on the first floor. I was born there, and I remember having a store beneath the apartment. It was a grocery store, I believe, and I lived there until I was about 5 years old, about 4 or 5 years old. That's about it at the beginning, anyhow. And of course, my name now is Stevens. It was at that time Schlomkowitz.
How do you spell that?
SCHLOMKOWITZ. One of the longest names, and it was very difficult for me to write my name in school because of the length of the number of letters in the name.
So did your entire family change their name?
No, I was the only one who changed initially. Yeah, I was the only one. My brother, very recently, he's 92 years old. I guess he's changed it about 3 years ago. He changed it to Schlom, S-C-H-L-O-M. But that was very recently he had it legally done. Mine was done legally in 1950, I believe, around 1950, 51. That was about it at that time.
Where you lived, was it a Jewish neighborhood? Or
It was
a mix?
completely Jewish, very, very Jewish. In fact, it's called the Bathgate Avenue area of the Bronx. There's a shopping market all around the area there. And it was all Jewish. It had many shuls and shibboleth and all these little in-betweens. So it was very predominantly Jewish. It was non-Jewish, actually.
So at home, was English your first language, or was it Yiddish?
English was my first language, except that my mother usually spoke English to me and my sister and brother. But when she spoke to my father, she spoke in Yiddish. They spoke generally in Yiddish. But my father was able to speak English too, but not very well.
Were you the oldest child?
I was the youngest of
Oh, you were
three,
the youngest.
Yeah. In fact, there was about a 3-year difference between my brother and myself. He was he was the middle one, and my sister was 7 years older than me. Yeah, she was the oldest one.
Your parents, where were they born?
My mother was born in a suburb of Kiev. It was called Boyaka. And my father was born in Novorodomsk, which was a suburb of Radomsk, and in Poland, actually, that was at that time. He was born in 1890, and my mother was born in 1895. My mother came here when she was less than 5 years old, in 1899, just before the turn of the century. My father came here as he was 17 years old when he came here, but his brother came here before him, his older brother, about 5 years or so before he did. Yeah, that was.
Did your parents have relatives here? I mean, what?
Well, my father had. Let's get this straight. My father had a brother who lived here. He had several brothers in Poland, but they never came here, except for one who visited once in a while. And my mother's family, I believe they all came at about the same time, maybe within a year or two of each other. I know she had an older sister who lived in Flatbush, Brooklyn, but they came here really almost on their own, I believe, when they came here, except for my father's brother and and that's about it, yeah.
Did you know why they immigrated?
Definitely. My mother came here because of Well, first of all, her father died at a very early age, about 25. So she was left fatherless since she was 4 or 5, whatever, 4 years old or so. And my grandmother came with her, and her, on this picture here, I have a picture of
Well, let's see that picture.
yeah. This is interesting. Let me take this out. Let's get this out here.
And who was in that
Yeah.
picture?
My mother is on the right-hand side here. My grandmother, her mother, is next to her, and this is her niece, her grandchild actually is next to her. That's her grandchild. My mother was her aunt actually, and this is another grandchild, her brother, who my mother was her was his aunt actually. That's what it was.
All right, we have that picture. That's very good.
Let's see. Okay.
Now, when you went to school in the Bronx,
Yes.
obviously it was a Jewish neighborhood,
It was predominantly Jewish,
so
yes.
you didn't encounter much
No
anti-Semitism when you were going to
very
school.
little, very little.
What schools did you attend?
Well, the public schools were all, well, in the Bronx they were. I attended 3 different public schools. One, PS 61, which is from kindergarten to 2nd grade. And then I went to PS 50, which was from the 3rd grade to the 6th grade. And then finally I ended up at junior high school number 98. And I graduated there in 1933, actually. I was there from 31 to 33. I accelerated school. I gained about 2 years of skipped the classes in between. So I went through school pretty fast, I guess.
Was there a Jewish center there? Were you involved with any activities?
Really, we were so Jewish that we didn't realize we had all these Jewish institutions around us. In fact, one of the blocks, places I lived on, actually was alongside synagogue there. And so it was just like, this was home. You just went in, went out, and did whatever you want. And there was no formal education or anything like that.
So that was the extent of your education, or did you?
No, then I continued. Oh no! After I graduated from, then I went to James Monroe High School, also in the Bronx, and I was there from 1933 to 1936 when I graduated from there, and then I attended City College from 1936 to 1944. And of course my education, I worked during the day and went to school at night most of the time, except for the last year. After I was discharged from the Army in 1943, I went back to City College and completed my course in business administration. In fact, my objective in going to college was to become a pharmacist, but we were very, very poor. I couldn't attend, so I attended City College there. And I switched my degree from whatever, I think it was majoring in history, and then I switched off to business administration and majored in statistics actually at City College. Subsequently, let's see, in 1950 or 51, I went back to college to get a degree in education, and I got a degree in education, well, childhood education actually. Then, while working for this firm in Manhattan, Burlington Industries, I went to back to school to get a master's degree in marketing research, which I got in 1967. And that was it as far as my education goes. But I continued taking part-time courses in various subjects. I would just like to. But the most interesting experience during my lifetime was the anti-Semitism which cropped up along the way. Number one was at college, City College, when I first entered there. I was taking this French course, well, I think it was a two-year course, I believe. I had taken it in junior high school too, I took French, and I excelled in it. Well, I had this professor, William Knickerbocker, there at City College. In 1938 or around there, 38, 37, that's when I had him. He suddenly came out with a comment about Mussolini. And he was very intense about this, that Mussolini is doing the right thing, and then he mentioned, I guess he did mention Adolf Hitler also at that time. But it was so, I couldn't just believe that. At the end of the term, he flunked me in French. And I understand the reason he flunked me because, well, he was number one, anti-Semitic. There's evidence in the papers about him. This was a very disheartening experience. So I went back the following term to redo this course in French again. I'm doing A work all along, but when the final mark came out, it came a B in French. And I just knew it. Well, anyhow, this is one of the first, right between the eyes, I knew this guy was just anti-Semitic and just didn't care about anything. And when he said my name in French, he said, Monsieur Schlompkowitz, you know, and he wore pince nose glasses. His head was kind of long, but he was short, and he was such an unbelievable person to contend. I mean, to be with. I mean, just couldn't believe it. Then, let's see. After that, let's see what happened after that.
Well, now you're graduating, you got your master's. Were you still single then?
No, I was married then. We got married in 1945.
Where did you meet your wife?
Yes, that's interesting too. We met at a Painters Union ball in the Bronx, where everyone was, and it was a rainy night. It was actually our Pearl Harbor Eve, actually December 6th, when I met her at this dance. Well, I came. It was a really rainy, bad night, and she came with her sister, who was 2 years old, but no, a year older than her, and I came with 3 of my friends to this dance. And the first time I took a look at Fanny, I just said, "This is the girl I like to be with." Mm-hmm. And at the end of the evening, we went off ourselves, forgetting about her sister and my friends, and we just went away. And so I courted her for a couple of years, because she was much younger than me, by the way. She was 17 at that time, and I was 24, yeah. About, oh no, it's 23. I was 23 at that time. And we got married in 1945, finally. We were married on February 3rd, 1945, which is 2345. So I remember the date. I would remember it. And let's see, what else could I say about it? Oh, we had our wedding at the Ellesmere Hall in the Bronx, which is a popular place for all weddings, Jewish weddings, of course. And let's see, it was a snowy day. The day we got married was very, very snowy, and really, it was a very heavy snow at that time. But we managed through all of that. Let's see, what else?
So do you remember, were the weddings as elaborate? I mean, there were just loads of people and...
This was during the war, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And I know, let's see, what was the fare there? I guess it was chicken, and the usual things. But instead of whiskey, which was hard to get then, I guess we had beer. We had beer. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's about it. We actually had beer instead of whiskey.
So now that you're married, are you working at the same time you're going to school?
Yeah, I was working and going to school at the same time. Correct. That's right. So we managed to live on a very low level of income. I know. We paid. Let's see. I just want to think of the apartment we had. We paid $35 per month. It was a 1-bedroom apartment, and it was a walk up, 4 flights up, and yeah, that was a rough stage there where we had to try to get some accommodation because there wasn't much housing available at that time also.
Was this in the Bronx?
In the Bronx, yes.
And where were you working? What were you doing?
At that time I was working in, public opinion research, statistics, and we were doing sampling and so on. It was a very technical type of thing, mathematical mostly.
This dance that you mentioned was a painters union. Why were you?
Hey, why was I there? Yeah. One of my friends was a member of this union called Local 65, which was very important at that time, Local 65. And is involved in many different organizations and so on. I mean, this was a painters union. I think they were actually in the textile area to begin with. So it was a very complicated sort of thing. I mean, the reason that we were there was, and my father-in-law, he got a ticket, a pass or whatever it was, to this ball from one of his friends who belonged to the union.
What was Fanny's last name before you got married?
Hatkin, Hatkin, Yeah.
So when you lived in the Bronx, were there any children?
Yes, we had 2 children living in that 1-bedroom apartment. Actually, it's about 7 years apart. My daughter and my son. My son is the older one.
And what is his name?
Joel Allen Stevens, and my daughter, her name was Lois Thea Stevens. She changed her name finally from Lois to Yoni because she wanted the Hebrew. She was very involved in, later on with Orthodox activities, and that's something else we'll go to later. And now her name, of course, is Nierman, Yoni Nierman, N-E-I-R-M-A-N, and they live up in Vermont. My son lives in Longmeadow, Massachusetts, and each of them have 3 children, and we have 3 great-grandchildren also along the way.
Very nice. Well, what did Fanny's parents, or what did her father do for a living?
Her father worked for one of these, for several of them, I guess, shoe manufacturer thing, I. Miller, I believe it was. And then for a while, I guess during the Depression years, he ended up in Bangor, Maine, although the family lived in the Bronx, because that's the only place he got employment. And I guess one of the shoe factories was up there in Bangor, Maine. Yeah. My mother-in-law was just an at-home woman, old-fashioned, doing all her cooking at home and so on.
And how about your mother?
Well, my mother, she was very oriented toward being educated. This little interesting event about her. She came here, of course, when she was about 5 years old, 4 or 5 years old. And she ended up working, she went to school to the 5th grade. And then she had to leave school, actually, because they had no money. They were very poor. And she ended up working in a candy factory, Loft Candy Factory, packing the candies in the box. And I don't know how long she stood there, but she worked there for a while. And she was really concerned with education to the extent that when I went to school, she felt I was the brightest kid there was because I was doing this and that and all. And she encouraged me to really keep on going in academic work and so on. But and she was really so concerned with education, it was part of me at that time. But I say along the way, in the back of my mind, even though I was a kid, I thought of being a pharmacist, and I said before, he just didn't have any money to go to school.
And how about your dad? What was?
Oh, he was a tailor and I guess a garment worker in the ladies' garment clothing, coats and suits, I guess. That's what it was. So he owned the tailor store for a while, and during the Depression, he got some money loaned to. He loaned money from my grandma. My grandmother gave him money to buy this tailor shop in the Bronx, and she gave him $200. That must have been a fortune at that time, to buy this tailor store, which he owned. And I think he stood there about a year or so, but the things were very, very bad in that particular tailor store. So he finally went back to working in the garment area in New York City, Manhattan there.
Is that when you say he walked to work?
Oh, yeah. And of course, that was during the very, very bad years, tremendous. That was in the, 1929, 30s, 31, so on. He used to walk from the Bronx where we lived to get to Manhattan, and then walk back again, and to save that 10-cent round-trip fare just to get to work and back again. And then there was really very bad, just the unemployment rate was so great. I mean, it hit everything everywhere. So he ended up working as, looking for a job as a presser in a tailor shop or wherever. And he used to get up so early in the morning, I say around 4 o'clock in the morning, to get the newspaper to see where anyone advertises for a presser. And he used to get these jobs, part-time jobs, until much later on, of course. He did that for several years.
You mentioned before that you were the youngest of the 3 children in your family.
Yes.
How was the relationship with your brother and your sister?
Yeah. I got along my brother got along very well with me, and I, of course, with him also. He was so close. He's only 3 years older, 3.5 years older than me, but he would watch every move I make, and then when I was with him, I know that he just didn't take his eyes off me. Well, one day, I escaped from his vision, and he didn't see me. So he ran up to my mother and told her I can't find Danny. So they all got hysterical. But the next thing that I knew, or they knew, was that I was being photographed in this this big truck right outside our apartment house where we lived. And I have a picture of that. I'd like to see it later on. And they found me, and everything was fine. But he did a lot to be with me, and he admired me all along the way.
He helped you with your homework?
He didn't help me with my homework, but he knew that he felt that I was a little better, much better in math and so on. He knew that, and he was so proud of me along the way, really. It used to embarrass me, really. He used to, whenever he met someone, he says, this is my brother, and he has this degree and so on. And it was so embarrassing, but he's so proud of having me with him at the moments when we were together. So we got along very, very well.
Yeah, very lucky. Tell me about Morris Elbaum.
Oh yeah, we go back to about the 4th grade in the public school. He was about 8 years old. I must have been 7 years old about that time. Well, I contracted scarlet fever. And of course, we used to have a sign on the door, do not enter and so on, prohibited. But this Morris Elbaum, for one reason or another, I don't know why, but he felt that he should see me and give me the daily work assignments, homework assignments, and he used to come up there daily. And here the sign was on the door that he should not come in, but he used to do this. So I just say, how could he have done this? His parents have permitted him to come to my house and go through the doorway and so on and meet me, but he did this, and that's the last I knew of him from at that point. But I just can't forget the fact that he came up and while I had scarlet fever, and he gave me that information.
Well, during this time when your children were growing up, did you live in this one apartment or?
We lived there, yeah, let's see, we lived in that one apartment, that was 1391 Nelson Avenue. We lived there from we moved in 1945 to 1969. No, 1959, I'm sorry, 1959. And at that time I was working for, let's see, I guess, yeah, 1959, I was working for Burlington Industries, that was the last job I had, actually. I had several before that, of course. So we moved there in 1959, we moved from there in 1959 because my salary was going up, and we just felt we needed larger quarters. They were getting old, the kids were, 13 and 7 or 6, so we had to get to larger quarters, and we ended up living at this Casa Hill houses in the East Bronx, and we lived on the 12th floor of this, of course, elevated building. And while I was there, my salary kept going up and up and up at that time, and we were really almost forced out of the building because we had more than the
cap,
whatever the charge.
Salary
I
cap.
forgot what it was. Now.
During the Depression, were you able to stay in one location with your parents? Or
That's another big effort. Between 1920, when I was born, and 1930, I guess around 1930, around 1930 something, I see, 38 or 1938, I believe it was. They must have moved at least 12 times. I mean, it was just one moving in and moving out right along the way. And the reason we moved, because they gave rental concessions along the way, like 2 months or 4 months, depending on what it was. So we kept on moving just to avoid having to pay that extra sum of money during those Depression years.
So why did you decide to move to Stanford?
Okay, now we come to the reason why we left the Bronx. We lived on the 12th floor of this building, and we used to go to the Israel Day parades every year. Really, we did it annually. And this particular day, my daughter and myself decided to go to Israel Day parade that day. We get on the elevator at the 12th floor, and there was this young kid, I don't know, 14 or 15 years old. And I, greeted him and said hello or whatever, and I looked at him. The next thing I know, he says, "What are you looking at?" I said, "I'm just seriously looking at you." So he pulls out a knife. It was a long, a good switchblade knife, a good knife there. And we go down to the main floor. No one gets on the elevator in between going down from the 12th floor to the main floor. And we had to exit. My daughter, of course, was frightened, no end. And I was standing alongside him, and he had this blade there. I was able to grab him, really, just grab him, and just grab him very tightly. When we got out of the elevator, I bounced him against this concrete pillar in the lobby there, and he started to bleed because I bounced him off the thing. The next thing I know is this one of our neighbors who knew me well. He says, "What are you doing to this kid?" He says. So I had to explain to him what had happened, and I held him there actually until the police could come finally, and they sent this kid to some institution subsequently, some mental institution. But we were so frightened, we had to get out of there. I was working. This was when I was working for Burlington Industries, and we had moved. The firm had moved from New York City to the Palisades area of New Jersey there. And one of the people who worked there, who lived in Stanford, mentioned that he knew that I wanted to get out of where we were living. And he says, "Why don't you come he happened to be a Greek Orthodox person, member of the Greek Orthodox Church. He says, Dan, you know, there's a synagogue around here, and he mentioned congregation at Guth Shalom. So I said, well, we'll go there and look. And he said, then he can join us in a pool to go commute every day between New Jersey and Connecticut and Stamford. So we did finally, we went to the Jewish Center here on Prospect Street at the time. And I spoke to Irving Stern. Did you know who he was?
No.
Yeah, well anyhow, he was I guess he was the director there at that time.
Mhm.
I know he moved finally from there to Long Island, but so he directed us to apartments that we might be interested in, to Morgan Manor to begin with.
Yeah.
And we looked at different places, and we settled for Morgan Manor, and we moved out of there in 1960, moved there in 1969.
Sometime in your career, you were in the Army.
Yes, I was drafted in January 1943. I was discharged in March of 1943 and put into the, I guess the reserve was called after that. And I was called up again later on in, I guess, the Korean War. But already we had our family, and they didn't take anybody if you wanted to. And that was it. Yeah.
Who was Sergeant Rosenberg?
Oh, that's another encounter with this I thought he was, named Rosenberg. You think it's generally Jewish.
Yeah.
Well, when I got there, he said, "You are, effing Jew, effing Jew," and he was so intense about that, the way he said it, derogatory and really terrible. So that was about the encounter at the Fort Dix station where we were sent at that time. Let's see.
Okay, now, during, when you moved to Stamford, was Fanny working?
When we moved to yes, Fanny was working in New York City at the time, right.
What was she doing in New York City?
She was a bookkeeper in one of these, I forgot, one of the textile firms, I believe, yeah. And she was pretty good at what she was doing there, but she earned an income which helped us along.
Yeah.
Things were changing at that time.
And your children went to Stamford public schools?
No, my son went to Monroe High School also, and then he went to City College. He got his engineering degree at City College. So he ended up in atomic plant construction, but anyhow, my daughter went to James Monroe High School also, but she, she went to, then she came to Stamford High School to finish her last, I think she was around 14, 15 when she went there. And she graduated from Stamford High School, and then she went to, Douglas College for her, and then she went into social work. Actually, she's been working up in Vermont there, in New Hampshire, hospital there as a social worker. And my son is a mechanical engineer. No, he went to RPI also, originally at Polytech, and got his master's degree in mechanical engineering.
So what do you do, or what have you done in your spare time for, other than bringing up your children and working?
Let's see,
It wasn't spare time.
Reading, actually, I do a lot of reading, especially nonfiction is my great interest, and also biographies. I feel very comfortable reading biographies and nonfiction, because there's such distortion. Now, first of all, in reading, I guess these distorted looks at what's going on. I mean, the way the reports are written and what it actually is and what it is not, and really try to determine what is and what is not in reading. It's very difficult to do, but I enjoy reading it. And then, I used to participate in many, many sports, including volleyball, softball, and I enjoyed walking. Oh, walking was one of my great. I used to walk about 15 miles daily, at least. I mean, I just felt comfortable walking, but not today. I'm much too old to move those creaky bones. But I do it. I walk.
When did you retire from Burlington?
In 1986, just before my 66th birthday, and the reason they just pushed me out of the organization, I was there 32 years, a long time. Actually, my first job, I said, was in public opinion research, and then I was with the United Nations for about a year, about a year or so, and I was in economic affairs and oil shipments and so on between nations. It was very interesting.
You worked for the city planning department in New
Yes,
York?
and then I worked for the city planning department, and that was a very interesting job. I mean, planning. Actually, the projections that were made at the time I was there was about the predominance of the Puerto Rican population in New York City. And there was some interesting decisions made as a result of that, where the land was purchased by these big real estate operators on Third Avenue and all the other places where they put up these skyscrapers. So we worked with those people quite often.
Then when you moved to Stanford, were you employed any other place?
Oh, before I got my job in, let's go back even. Before I got my permanent job, more permanent, of course, in Burlington, I belonged to the American Statistical Association, and one of the members, Frank Lang, who was a member of the association, was working for this firm, the American Association of Casualty and Surety Companies in Manhattan. And he said, Dan, he said, there is an opening for a statistician at that time in this organization. Well, anyhow, and he said, you should qualify for that. Well, the next thing I know is that he comes back to me and Frank says, you know, the head of the organization is J. Dewey Dorsett. He says, and your name, Slomkowitz at the time, he says, he can't have you, sorry. And that was one of the things right between the eyes I had, because that was such, I know the organization and it was, well anyhow, I just couldn't get in there. And so I had, just, that was it, I just felt so badly about the fact that because of my name, I could not get this job. So that was a decision we had to make, I had to make, to change my name to Stevens.
And you worked at an auto repair shop?
Oh yes,
Was that in Stanford?
well after I was terminated by my Burlington Industries firm, I worked both as a substitute teacher in the Stanford school system for I think about 11 years or so, 12 years. And then I also, at the same time, worked for this auto repair and body shop there, or tire place, for a number of years, about the same amount of years. And I earned almost as much money as I did while working at Burlington Industries, or maybe more.
What was the name of the shop that you worked at?
Beeline Auto and Tire.
Oh, Beeline.
Yeah,
Yes.
nice.
Yeah.
I had a very nice relationship there. Yeah.
And when you're substitute teaching, what subjects were you teaching?
Math generally, but I was put into many different areas, through science and other areas. Let's see, yeah, that was generally where I ended up in the math, and usually at the high school, Stanford High School is the one I really stood at most of the time.
And now that you have leisure time, what other volunteer things have you been doing?
Well, now we're with the Historical Society is one of them, board member, and I'm also in the library committee, and let's see,
Do you have any hobbies?
The hobbies I say is number one is reading and the sports about it. That's about it. Other than that, I used to be interested in photography, but that went way beyond me after a while. So I'm not up to it right now anymore.
So you've been in Stanford for quite a while, and you've seen a lot of big changes.
Yes, I want to say so.
And what's your take on it? I mean, do you think that it's a better community to live in? Is it?
Well, when we
Did you
got
like
here,
the good old days?
when we got here in 1969, it was really a small community. Really, it's just the number of people and the way the city was set up. I remember Washington Boulevard being a dirt road almost, Washington Boulevard, and all these places changed so rapidly, and the expansion and all the congestion that is present now, it's not the same anymore. And I'm only here relatively a small time, say since '69. All right, what is it? 30 years or more, 40 years. But it changed very rapidly, and I think to me, the way I look at it, it's not the pleasant, soft community that I would have liked to be in. But we enjoy it. We enjoy Stanford.
You like living here?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, I think we're coming to the end of the interview, and then we'll go through your scrapbook of pictures, which is going to be a real treasure.
Okay.
And are there any reflections that you have to wind up? That you want to make any other comments?
I tell you, I enjoy being with you and with all the people that I've met in between. Really, I appreciate being around various groups here, including a senior men's club here, which is very good membership.
We were fortunate to have Dan bring in his photo album, and I'm going to have Dan explain who's in this picture.
Okay. On this one, on the on the left here is my mother, my grandmother, her mother. This is her two grandchildren, and this is my mother's niece, and this is her nephew. She is younger than her nephew.
Oh.
Okay, this was taken in 1921 while I was supposedly about a year old, I guess, if we can get that. and this one is a little older, I guess, 1920 something, 23. And this is in public school, 1930, which I said was about 10 years old. But and this is the one that when I got lost, when I thought I got lost, and I was taking this picture here, when I was about 2 or 3 years old, I guess there. And this is one of the getaways when I went 1930 or whatever it is. Yeah. Here we have another one, and this is just me over here with my mother, myself, my sister, my brother.
You can point some of these.
Okay. Oh, that's Fanny and her father. That's Fanny and her father. I guess, and her sister back there, yeah. This is Fanny and her sister. This is Fanny and her father. And this is Fanny and her sister. Her sister and Fanny. This is my mother-in-law, her sister, Fanny, and her brother. This is one of her friends. Fanny's over there. This is Fanny. 1941. And she is again. And this was one that was very popular, this picture here. She was imitating one, I don't know, Claudia Colbert in one of these pictures. I don't know, one of them. But anyhow, it was just an interesting one. Yeah, that's on top. That's right.
And what year? 1941.
Yep. This is a 1944. I believe this is the. Gee, I think this is my college graduation. Hotel Commodore, May 1944. Yeah, that was probably a graduation from City College at that time.
Tell me about this picture, Dan.
This one, that's our wedding picture at the Ellesmere Hall, I believe it was. That's when we got married. And I think that was taken by one of her, Fanny's cousins, who was a photographer. And yeah, I guess yeah, that was it. Yeah, that's what I.
What was the date?
That was February 3rd, 1945.
Mm-hmm. What do we see here, Dan?
Well, that's the menu. I think we had to know. Oh, is it? Saturday, February 3rd, 1945. Yes, so what is it? East 170th Street. Strictly kosher. Okay, we believe it.
Okay.
Okay, this is Ruth, her friend Ruth. This is Estelle. And this is Fanny's sister, who's the maid of honor. And this is Hilda, a friend, and Clara, another friend. Let's see.
What do we have here, Dan?
Oh, here, this is Fanny's sister, her brother, her father, Fanny, and her mother, and her brother.
This
It's
one?
the same. Yes, her father, yes, a sister, my mother-in-law, and Fanny's brother.
And who's in this picture, Dan?
Yeah, myself, my father, my mother, and the rabbi, whatever his name was.
Dan, we have this book here with a group picture. What is this?
Yeah, this is my father's society, Novorodomska Society, which was a beneficial, it's a community group. There's a tremendous article written in English here explaining what was happening. It's 1939 when Hitler was in power, and they spoke about it. And really, it's a very nice article written. I didn't realize it in the very beginning of the book here. And it's a celebration of the 100th anniversary.
And which one is your dad in this group?
He's at the very top over here on the end.
Okay, and I noticed that the text is in Hebrew.
In Yiddish.
It's Yiddish, yeah.
All Yiddish. But at the beginning of the book, it's in English, which is really, I can't.
Well, Dan, I think we've completed our interview.
Okay.
And I want to thank you very much on behalf of the Jewish Historical Society, and I'm sure that your family will enjoy reviewing the DVD that you'll get.
Okay.
And wish you good health, and thanks for your
Thank
opportunity to share your experiences with us.
Thank you.